feeling? Are you feeling more like a dementia expert? Yeah. You all know a lot more about dementia than most of the population right now. Isn't that exciting? All right. And wait till you start using some of these techniques and they work. You'll be emailing me going, thank you. I promise. Okay, joining the feelings no matter where they are on the journey, it's still, even in end of life, we'll do the rest of the books. Even in end of life, we'll do that at the end of the presentation. Okay? Yeah, thank you. Now, I want to stop and remind you all that in your packets, you have a survey. It's from Sutter, and you don't have to get it out now, but I'm going to remind you at the end, we have to fill out those surveys because those surveys help us to get funding for these kinds of seminars, kinds of care conferences. So I'm going to remind you to be sure and fill out that survey at the end of my presentation today. So we're going to get going because we have just a little under an hour to learn how we make them feel when we're helping them through the end of life and why that's so important. We're going to start practicing how we make them feel throughout their entire existence and journey. So please keep in mind that we're kind of jumping over all of that, but you've got lots of good tools. So let's go through basic dementia-aware strategies. No questions or options. Join their feelings. Use positive action statements. Stay calm, confident, patient, and present in the moment. Know that you cannot stop, fix, or change the symptoms, behaviors, or decline, and help them to feel loved, safe, secure, and valued. So, supporting the dementia caregivers at the end of their life. We talked about how at the end of life, when they're caring for a dementia individual, someone who's suffering with dementia symptoms, it's through every phase of this grieving process for that caregiver, because most of these causes, Alzheimer's, Lewy body, Parkinson's, these are terminal illnesses and diseases. Eventually, this can take their life. It will take their life eventually. And if something else doesn't take them first, because their bodies get so broken down, their immune systems get so broken down. So caring for people with Alzheimer's or another cause of dementia at the end of their life can be demanding and stressful. We talked about that. 68% of the time, that caregiver will go first. Depression and fatigue are common problems for the caregiver, but also dementia denial is so stressful for that family caregiver. So what's the antidote for dementia denial? Dementia awareness. Knowledge is power. So, family members need to know that hospice provides comfort, warmth, kindness, and I want you to understand that most people have in their mind that they can't access hospice unless the terminal diagnosis for their loved one is 6 months or less. That is not necessarily true with the dementia because we can't give that kind of diagnosis. Everybody's progression is so different. Sometimes I've worked with families that have had their loved ones on hospice care for a year or more because we do not know when the end will come, because with dementia, it's so different with each individual. So the best way for us to support that person, once again, with dementia symptoms, is to respond to their emotions. because that's, once again, going to help that person with dementia symptoms respond in return. Because what's the only thing that's left when they lose that learned brain function? The emotions. Those are what are real to them. So I want to tell you a story. I always bring in stories of experiences that I've had. And I want to tell you about a lovely older woman who I worked with when I was in gerontology school. I have a degree in gerontology, and one of our classes was called Reminiscence. And in Reminiscence, each of us students were assigned in a dementia care facility. We were assigned to our resident. We had a particular resident that we spent the entire semester with. And we'd have a class twice a week, and we would come, first of all, we'd come to our resident and spend the first hour just with that resident one-on-one. Then the second hour, we would bring our resident to a common area, and we would do a reminiscence activity as a group. So we'd bring our resident, whoever we were assigned to, we'd put everyone in a circle, and in our reminiscence class, we would have a different topic every day that we were there. It might be World War II. It might be your wedding. It might be a favorite pet. Something that we could bring about memories and feelings and share together. So we would have this topic, and we would give everyone a turn to talk about it. So we'd say something like, today we're going to talk about a favorite pet. So share with us a favorite pet that you may have had. And we got some wonderful stories. Some people had a pony, or they had a dog or a cat, and sometimes something really unusual. They had an iguana. It was amazing because those memories were there, and when we approached them and gave them the opportunity to share, those feelings would come up, and they would talk about how they cared for that pet and loved that pet and missed that pet. So it was really kind of fun. One of our residents, and she came with a little bit of a preconceived reputation. Her name was Veda. Now, she wasn't my resident that I was assigned to. She was assigned to one of the other students, unfortunately, because Veda was quite a handful. She was 101 years old.
Good for her.
She was very, very ill with a terminal illness, and she was very angry and abrasive and downright mean to everybody. So her student was trying to be patient and did the very, very best he could. Wonderful student, very committed and dedicated. But this is what Veda would do. He'd bring Veda down to the circle, and it wasn't long before she was going, I can't hear him. What are we doing here? Take me back to my room. I don't want to be here. Go away, shut up. And so most of the time, that student would have to take Veda away. So this would happen over and over again, and the staff would say, oh, I know, Veda's a handful. She yells at us all the time. She's so angry. So we came, and this would happen. And we came back, and it would happen. And that student was so patient, he would try. Then, towards the last of the class, we probably had about 3 left. At the very end, we were talking about birthdays. And Veda was sitting there, and she said, I can't hear them. And so the student said, we're talking about birthdays. Birthdays? What about birthdays? We want to hear about an important birthday that you experienced, Veda. Tell us about the most important birthday. And she was quiet for a minute, and all of a sudden, she connected with us. We triggered a really strong feeling that she had. She said, I'm going to tell you about a birthday I had. She said, my 8th birthday was awful. It was awful. And we said, tell us more, Veda. And we all were just mesmerized. What? And so Veda said, I was an only child. I lived on a ranch way, way out on the prairie. My mom and dad, I was homeschooled. I didn't have any friends. My mom and dad homeschooled me. But we had to work hard. I had chores all the time. I worked hard. I had to help them take care of this big ranch. I didn't have any fun. But my mom, she surprised me. When I was 7.5, she said we were going to have a big birthday party for me, for my 8th birthday. And we were going to invite everyone in the county. So my mom and I, we made handwritten invitations. And my dad took them out to all the different ranchers who had children. And we planned, we baked, and we made handmade decorations. And we worked for 6 months. I was so looking forward, and her voice started to get quieter and softer. I was so looking forward to my birthday party. I was going to play with some kids. I didn't even have to have any chores on that day. When I woke up on my 8th birthday, there was a blizzard. And no one could come, and tears started running down her face. I couldn't have my birthday because it snowed. And she began to weep. And we were all just, oh, Veda, that's awful. I can only imagine how you felt. We all just gathered around her, and she just wept. And she looked at us through this horrible, scared, anxious look on her face. And she said, I'm alone, and I'm going to die alone. And she wept. She said, I have no one. So the next week, we all went out. We bought a big, fluffy teddy bear, and we all signed its paws. We're with you, Veda. We love you, Veda. Happy birthday, Veda. And we gave that to her. And she was holding it, just beaming. And the staff said that was the first night she didn't yell at them. And then the next class we came, and the staff came and said that Veda had passed away, holding her teddy bear with a content look on her face. Are feelings important? That had probably driven her throughout her entire life. That unresolved conflict, that pain of being alone, always being alone. And for once in her life, some people were interested in how she was feeling. It totally changed my perception of what it is to be a human. We're all emotional vials. So not just hospice companies, but everyone, the world, can benefit so much from understanding what I mean by talking to the feelings. And we have to recognize in end of life these unique end of life challenges that terminal illnesses cause for those with dementia. It's different because it can be a very long process. They eventually can lead to death, But there's all these experiences and loss that come between that time that they start to show these symptoms and that disease progression. It goes to that terminal event. And it's so unpredictable. Everybody's so different. So, you know what? Somebody with dementia symptoms, their body may continue to be physically healthy. However, there's that gradual loss of thinking and processing and reasoning. So they begin to have challenges with communication, right? We can't communicate with them the same way. For example, medications, we were just talking about that with somebody. Medications, they're available, but they delay or keep the symptoms from getting worse for a limited time, but they're not stopping, fixing, or changing anything. So what is it that we have? We're going to keep coming back. What is it that we have to give them comfort? Joining their feelings. Constantly allowing them to feel. Now, that caregiver is going to want to understand these available medical options that are different from a hospice team, right? So you want to help caregivers, and if you are working with caregivers, but actually if you are a caregiver, you want to know what questions to ask when it comes to dementia care. Who can help me with end-of-life care? Well, hospice and palliative care can help you with that. And I usually encourage family members to ask for that early. Don't wait. Ask for it as soon as you can get it. How will your suggested approaches affect their quality of life? Well, it's going to help give them more moments of meaning, give them more relief, and it's going to help that caregiver have more moments of meaning as well. What are my options if I can no longer manage care with my loved one at home? Well, then we need to have all these resources, different opportunities. You can be in assisted living or memory care, and you can get hospice there, but you have to meet certain criteria, and they have to have it available. So if you can't care for them at home, there are ways for you to still access hospice and palliative care outside of the home. How can I best decide when a visit to the doctor or hospital is necessary? Well, anytime that you are feeling uncomfortable and you feel that you cannot give them the sensitive and competent care, and there's some kind of physical challenge, well, then you're going to want to go to the doctor or hospital so that you can get some help. Should I consider hospice at home? Absolutely. If you are caring for your loved one at home, hospice can be that extra resource that can help you keep them at home and help give a lot of support that you're not going to get without them. You know, caregivers are going to find it hard to provide that emotional and spiritual comfort because you're not going to be able to ask them what they're feeling. You're going to have to be a feeling detective and join them in whatever they're feeling at that time. So if they're having severe loss of ability to process memories or anything else, then they're going to appreciate different kinds of connections. And this is really positive action. So these sensory connections, hearing, touch, or sight, we're using all we can to connect with them, not just the words. Why can't we just depend on the words? They can't process it. Yeah, so we have to do show and tell, very much like we did when we were a kid. We would do show and tell. So we use our actions, we use our feelings. We help them to feel safe. We use maybe our hands, we touch them, we maybe give them a hug. All of those things are positive actions in themselves. Being touched or massaged can be soothing, listening to music. That's positive action in the way of their hearing. Music is calming, right? Because they've learned how that makes them feel, right? White noise. Why can white noise be helpful? Because they don't have to think about it. We don't think about white noise, do we? It just tends to have a vibration that calms our brain. Sounds from nature That's always calming. I like to listen. I have the Calm app on my phone, and I like to listen to a rainstorm when I'm falling asleep. That's relaxing to me, right? So all of those are in themselves joining their feelings and positive action, okay? Okay, it's not uncommon for those who take care of a person with advanced dementia to feel a sense of relief when death happens. How does that make you feel?
Sad.
Yeah, sad. And it's almost, you almost don't want to think about that. That almost seems wrong. Is it wrong to feel that? No. No, absolutely not. This is such a challenge, and it's so abstract to us. Someone was just telling me that, that their experience, it just came on them, and they had no warning, and all of a sudden they're in this, and it's so much. Yeah, it gets overwhelming. So that's about how the caregiver's feeling. It's all about how they're feeling too. How do you think it's going to feel to that person that they're caring for if that caregiver's constantly coming to them with these kinds of feelings? It's frightening to them. So we have to practice, unfortunately, not just not asking questions, which comes so natural to us, but we also have to practice being careful about what we're feeling. And we need to take those feelings and leave them outside that relationship, because that other person that has dementia symptoms cannot help you process that. You have to get others. You have to build your village. You have to lean on others to help you process your feelings, because what's going to happen if you ask them? It's going to make them anxious. Yep. If you're caring with somebody with dementia, you're slowly losing pieces of your loved one as the disease is progressing. It's normal and natural to experience grief every time these losses appear. Okay. That's called unfolding grief. And that unfolding grief is over this entire period when you are caring for somebody who has brain function loss. So it's over time. It's constantly unfolding. And then, at the end, you have, all closer and closer to the end, you have anticipatory grief. You're anticipating that loss and experiencing this unfolding grief. And then you have that acute grief when that person is gone. So it's these three layers of grief that some of the other terminal illnesses, that does not appear in the relationship. Because someone with lung cancer, the doctor can say, well, this is what's going to happen in 6 months. This is what's going to happen in 8 months. You can't do that with dementia symptoms. Everybody's so different. So in spite of the grief, I want you to understand you're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. It's absolutely human for you to be feeling all of these different kinds of grief that don't go away. They continue to stay with you. There's hope when you can find meaningful moments, purposeful interactions, and still manage to keep your family intact. I work with families and they say, my brother in Delaware, and I live in California, my brother in Delaware keeps saying, oh, mom's not that bad. Because mom rallies whenever she's with him, and he's only there for a short time, and he's not seeing the whole picture. So how is that making that caregiver feel? Because that caregiver who's with them all the time is experiencing grief and all of these other emotions that are natural, and they know that mom's getting closer. And so it's all about helping the entire family become dementia-aware, right? As you become more dementia aware, you learn to take time for yourself and seek help all along the journey. Why do we need to take time for ourselves?
We're not good.
If you're not good, you can't be good for that other person. And what are those statistics again? 68% of the time, that caregiver will get sick and go first, even if they're already on hospice, right? They may still outlast you if you don't get help. I often say, I think we need to have a special hospice and palliative care for the caregiver because even though their terminal illness is being a caregiver, right? Through every phase of the grieving process, it's important to let yourself feel the pain and conflicting emotions. Man, this is full of conflicting emotions. Just like we were talking about, feeling guilty because you're wondering when this is going to end. And you must allow yourself to travel down your own unique grieving path, just like your own unique dementia care path. And so it's good to have support. It's good to have a support system, but be careful that you don't compare yourself. If you're going to a support group, be careful that you don't compare yourself to another caregiver. Well, they did that. And it worked. I must not be doing it right. Because every single situation is different.